Hello, everybody. Welcome to another video. Hope you're doing really well on this beautiful Friday morning. Today, we are getting into the Civil War. The Civil War, a crazy time period, a period crazier than Mr. D'Amico's ridiculous hair right now, a period more insane, more intense, more demanding than even the COVID-19 crisis that we're going through, an insanely intense, world changing, obviously nation changing, life changing, total war experience in America that pitted literally a country against itself. The North, which is the Union, and the South, which is the Confederates. Probably, in my opinion, the most interesting and really, like I said, world changing, impactful time period in all of American history, arguably maybe besides like World War II or besides for the American Revolution. But, the winner of this war decided the future of our country. And, if anything went differently, the butterfly effect, right? If things went a little bit differently in this Civil War and who knows, small changes here and there, who knows what type of country we would be living in today? Who knows if we'd be here, if everybody would have freedom eventually? I'm sure we all would have, but just an intense time period. Again, I do apologize for my hair. It's been about 2.5 months now, and I don't know what to do with it. It looks like somebody put a raccoon on top of my forehead. Um, so we're all a little bit confused about that. So, try not to look at that gentleman in the bottom right-hand corner of the video and pay attention to the content instead. So today we are diving into the Civil War, as we talked about. You're going to have some questions to go along with it, as we know, right? America's at a tough time. Okay, this war was inevitable. It was going to happen sooner or later, right? I mean, it was just a nation truly divided. One nation under God. This was a lot more like two nations, okay? Two totally separate countries living within one nation, okay? We have the North, which is going to be our Union, which really cuts off to the north. If you look at the map here, the north of Maryland, the north of Delaware, and New Jersey is actually one of the southernmost states in the North. So New Jersey was part of the Union at this time. This is a little bit before this, but so we have the Union, and then we have the Confederacy. They secede. They call themselves the Confederate States of America, and they are, as far as they're concerned, the blue on this map, they are their own country. They no longer are part of the United States. They're the Confederate States of America. They are their own thing with their own laws, with their own constitution, with their own president, Jefferson Davis, with their own leaders, with their own militia, their own everything. They want nothing to do with the United States of America anymore. They're totally separate. Okay. And big key thing here, the American capital at this time was Washington, D.C., which was right in here, right along Maryland, Virginia. So technically that was actually part of the Confederacy. But like I said, we have the Kansas-Nebraska Act that was passed that showed that slavery actually would be allowed in the new territories. It was going to be up to them. It was not outlawed. It was going to be up to the new territories what they wanted to do. And we talked about the Dred Scott decision, which basically says that this gentleman, Dred Scott, who sued for his freedom? Well, actually, they said that he's not even a person. He has no right to even be in court. This is the Supreme Court of the United States saying this. So these are all just drops in the bucket, things that slowly trickled and led to this Civil War. But they said, okay, you're not even a person. Okay, you don't even have the right to sue because you don't belong in court. So this was a big decision, and the abolitionists truly hated the decision. Talked a little bit about runaway slaves. And then eventually, like we said, the first state to secede is South Carolina. So South Carolina is going to secede. They're going to remove themselves. And then 7 other states follow suit: Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7. So 6 others follow suit. So 7 total are going to secede from the country. Imagine that today. I just can't picture a time period where, just imagine we switched it and imagine it was like we had a new war about some sort of issue in America right now, like the West versus the East. And it's like the new Civil War. Like, imagine you just like turn on the TV. They didn't have TVs, obviously, but reading a newspaper. Imagine you turn the TV on and it says like, California is removing themselves. They're seceding from the United States of America. And then Wyoming is following. And so is Nevada and Washington and Oregon and Idaho, and they are going to fight against the East because they want different, they want to just imagine that. Imagine what these people were going through. And another crazy thing is that a lot of people had family members. If you lived, say, in the North in the Union, a lot of people had family members that lived in the South. And so many people, millions of people enlisted in this war. There were so many times where people literally fought against their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their friends. Imagine living on a border state, for example, living in Pennsylvania, living right here on that border. You probably know a lot of people in Virginia, right? Not that travel was that easy at the time, but you probably knew a lot of people in Virginia. You might be literally going to war with them, with family members, with friends, with people that you've met before. So truly civil meaning, 2-1, two against two of one place fighting against each other. It's like literally having a fight with a sibling, fight with your brother, except a little bit more serious, right? So these nations secede. And Abraham Lincoln, whose presidency coincides exactly with the Civil War, 1861, 1865. He's a president for 4 years. He gets reelected eventually. Then we know what happens to him in 1865, where he gets assassinated, unfortunately. But it's his job. You could sit here and think about, okay, if I asked you right now, name 3 presidents, I would bet just about anything. You would say George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and then who knows? You might say Trump, Obama. You might say someone recent. You might say FDR. You might say Thomas Jefferson. I don't know, but I would say 99% of Americans or people around the world, when they're forced to name 2 or 3 American presidents, Lincoln is going to be in there. And why is that? Because Lincoln is the leader of the Union. He wants to preserve the Union. It is his goal, his job, to try to make the situation better. A little bit more intense than a situation, right? It's literally a civil war. It's his job to try to address both sides without kind of poking the bear, without making things worse. He's got some really tough decisions to make. Lincoln's leadership qualities are truly tremendous. He's an excellent leader. He actually dealt with a lot of difficulties in his life. He had depression. He had a lot of very, very challenging, bad situations in his life that he overcame. There's a really good movie on it, just literally called Lincoln. But he's so famous because this is what he deals with, right? And you might think that he frees the slaves, and which is generally true. Frees the slaves, preserves the Union, but without him, who knows? Under some different leadership, it's very possible that things would have went differently in America. Okay, so there he is, Mr. Lincoln. So we're going to have 2 slides of notes today. You don't have to write these down or anything, but I'm going to ask you some questions that go with it. So the last attempts at compromise here. The Union, now we say Union. The Union is just, the Union for right now is the United States of America. Go with the Union, United States of America. It's the nation, the Union, togetherness. You have a Union. Okay, it was on the brink of absolute total collapse. You had those 7 states totally secede. So Senator Crittenden, he proposes one last draw, one last proposition, one last compromise. And he says, okay, let's try here one more time to basically eradicate the situation. Let's make things better. Okay. He wants to extend, if you remember that Missouri Compromise line, it was the 3630 line, the line that basically runs from right to left or left to right. Says slavery is allowed underneath this line. Slavery is not allowed to the north of it. It's the old Missouri Compromise line that was, if you remember, what took that over was the Kansas-Nebraska Act, because the Kansas-Nebraska Act overthrew the Missouri Compromise. They want to bring back the Missouri Compromise and basically say, okay, slaves are allowed below this. Slaves are not allowed above this, okay? I could think of a bunch of flaws with that specific compromise. I'm going to ask you some questions on it, but think about it. I mean, we talk about how this war was inevitable, and isn't this compromise allowing slavery in half the country and not allowing it in the other half, having 2 different laws, the matter of how powerful can states be? Can states undermine federal law? Can, think about federalism, right? Everyone is supposed to listen to the federal government, and then it's the states after that if the federal government doesn't address it. Is this really a long-term compromise, or is this just putting a Band-Aid on it and saying, okay, we're just going to try to prolong the situation. We just want to avoid war at all costs. So we're just going to have this compromise. So this might have helped for a couple months, maybe a couple years, but this really wasn't a long-term solution. And unfortunately, war was, it's tough. You could sit here and say, oh, they should have done this. They should have done this. They should have just come to an agreement. Okay, fine. What's your agreement? picture from both perspectives, Northerners versus Southerners, their different lifestyles, different industrialization versus farming, obviously different laws, different lifestyles. I don't know that there was another solution to this, but there is a last attempt at compromise. President Lincoln actually says, no, I don't like this. I don't think it's a good idea. So it actually never goes into effect. Lincoln totally shoots down the plan. Now, what Lincoln actually says is, a lot of people don't realize this. Lincoln's proposal, what he did like about the Crittenden compromise, Crittenden proposal, was that it actually allowed slavery to still exist in the states that it already had. So Lincoln actually says, you know what? That's fine. We could look back at one of the maps. Tennessee, sure, you could still keep your slaves. Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. I'm not trying to take slavery away from you. I just don't want you to secede. I want to preserve. I want to keep the Union. So it's not that President Lincoln supported slavery. Don't get my words mixed up here. But President Lincoln actually said, you know what? Southern states that already have slavery in existence, that have it as their statutes, as their laws, you can keep it. Okay. I'm not trying to remove it from you. I just want you to basically not secede. Okay. He doesn't like the compromise, but he does like that part. And you would think that Lincoln, people might look at Lincoln's response, in the South, that those seceding states that want to secede, they might look at it and be like, wow, this guy, this president kind of understands us. He's trying to, help us. He's trying to see it from all the perspectives. But at this time, the hysteria, the craziness, the intense feelings of nationalism and excitedness in the South, the Confederate States of America, was way too strong. It was like a wave of just like excitement from these southern states that were seceding. Like, let's go. We're going to become a new country. We're going to become a new nation. We have a new flag. We even have a new name. I talked about how they had new leaders, new laws, everything. So Lincoln's words about the Crittenden Compromise and how he wanted to allow slavery in the states that still existed, the South didn't even affect it. The South didn't even they weren't really interested in it. They just said, you know what? No, we want to create our own country. We're almost too far now. We're too far into this. We want to do it. Let's go. And as I said earlier, Lincoln was basically calling what the South was doing, especially South Carolina, the first one, said this is unconstitutional. It's against the law. Did the South really care about the law at that point? They're literally removing themselves from a country. Do you think they care about the Constitution? Do you think they care about federalism? Do you think they care about what's unconstitutional and what's not? No. So although Lincoln does claim what they're doing is unconstitutional, which many argue is unconstitutional, you can't just break away from the United States of America. The South, again, they didn't care. It was almost like they were too far in. They're committed to this plan. They're all in. And all of these things that built up to the war just helped it, intensify these feelings of nationalism. Okay. So here's that plan that we discussed, the Crittenden plan. You could see that 3630 line. So again, what Lincoln's proposal was this line here. Underneath it, keep your slaves. To the north of it, we would like to live differently. We would like to, have abolitionists, and we would like everybody to have equality and freedom. But again, the plan was never really taken into effect. Okay. Lincoln's big plan, preserve the Union. I'm going to say that a million times throughout these next couple of videos, lessons. Lincoln probably said it more. Okay. Actually, he did, since he was the president at the time. Preserve the Union. Preserve the Union. Let's keep America. We worked hard for 80 years, 70, 80 years in making America great, America strong, America powerful, westward expansion. Now we have great foreign policy, domestic policies. America's a world power at this time. Slowly but surely, they're becoming a world power. They really get their rank and their fame and their power after World War I, about 50, 60 years after this. But Lincoln's saying, look at all this work we've done. Let's preserve this. Let's keep it. Let's keep America what it is. But then you have the South literally doing their own thing, as we discussed. So war, as I said, probably 4 or 5 times now, really was inevitable. Okay, and this is kind of the progression of the Confederate States of America, their flags. This is probably the most popular one, the Confederate rebel flag. You have Bonnie Blue, so you can see the different years, but these are basically the different flags that they use to represent themselves. The Confederate States, remember, how they're their own country now, according to them. Right now, they have to fight for it, and crazy enough, really controversial. If you go down south, I don't think anybody's going to be traveling anytime soon. But if you do go down south, a lot of people have strong feelings against this flag, and for pretty good reason, right? I mean, what does this flag represent? It represents the Confederate States of America, which basically supported slavery, right? It's supported the belief that other human beings are not as good as some other human beings. But if you go down south, I'm telling you, the deeper south you go, the more you'll see a lot of these flags hung up. I've driven with some of my friends all the way down to Florida, and we pass through, say Alabama or Georgia, and you'll see, even in Florida, you'll see people hanging these flags, and there's debate on it. Should that be legal? Is that okay to do? And I'm not going to dive into it. I'm not going to get crazy into politics and stuff, but I'm just saying there are people that actually in 2020 still hang this Confederate flag, 150 years, even more, 60 years after the Civil War is over. So really, it's a controversial thing, but this is the flag that you'll be seeing a lot of as we cover the Civil War. Okay, last topic. We're going to do about 10 minutes on this. The fall of Fort Sumter. This is the official start of the Civil War here. So, excuse me as I have some coffee here. So the fall of Fort Sumter. So the South, Confederate States, slowly started to, as they seceded, they started to overtake federal buildings, federal locations. Federal means it belongs to the federal national government, the American government. They started to take over forts. They started to take over mints, which is like treasuries, places that coin money, arsenals, weapon arsenals. So anything that was within the southern borders, now remember, two separate places, right? The Union, the Confederacy, or the United States and the Confederate States of America. Anything that was in that southern border, the Southerners started to overtake slowly but surely. They said, this is in our borders. This is ours now. There's nothing the federal government can do about it. Okay. So there's a really, really famous, really vital, really important fort in Charleston. Charleston is a beautiful city in South Carolina. It's called Fort Sumter. Okay. Here's a look at what the fort used to be. It was right in the harbor, right in the bay there. Really essential for international trading with England, with France, with even some South American countries. It was right on the water. Charleston is a port city. So controlling this fort, Fort Sumter, which was big, this was a big fort at the time, was really vital. It was very, very important. Now, since it's in the southern border, right, it's in South Carolina, the Southerners claimed, this is our fort. Okay, this is ours. But the North did not want to lose this fort. Okay, if the North lost this fort, and the North and the Union and Lincoln gave this fort up and just said, okay, you know what, you could have it, South, that would be a sign. That would be a sign that Lincoln basically would just allow the South to take whatever they want. Sure, they took other forts and mints and arsenals, but Fort Sumter was so significant. And if Lincoln just rolled over and the Union rolled over and just said, yeah, they could take it, that would just be a sign to the South saying, okay, well, he's going to let us have this. We're going to just take the rest of everything and maybe slowly work our way north too. So this was so important. The guy pictured on the top right here, that is Major Robert Anderson. He was the federal commander of the fort, a very, very important man. The man on the right here, bottom right, not Mr. D'Amico, this guy is the local Confederate commander, G.T. Beauregard. Great name, G.T. Beauregard. I'll spell it out for you, don't worry. So the guy on the top right, I'm going to go over this again, Major Robert Anderson. Okay, he is the commander of Fort Sumter, working with Lincoln, working with the Union. Okay, he's a federal, power commander. He doesn't want to give the fort up. He gets orders from Lincoln. This guy here, G.T. Beauregard, he's the local Charleston commander of the Confederate Army. Okay, so these two are basically going to be pitted against each other in the battle when Fort Sumter does get attacked. Okay. G.T. Beauregard here, he orders Commander Robert Anderson, and the federal troops to leave. He says, you guys have a couple hours, get your stuff, leave. This fort now belongs to us. This fort now belongs to the Confederate States. And Commander Anderson says, no, I'm not leaving. I have federal orders. I have orders from Lincoln. I'm not leaving. I'm not doing it. Okay. Now, President Lincoln at the time, he's got a tough decision to make. Okay. We go back to the map here. Blue states already seceded. Okay. The gray states and I guess you can call it turquoise, those states were still part of the Union. Okay. But they were slave states. They did not secede yet, but they were still part of the Union before the Civil War, before the attack on Fort Sumter. Okay. These 8 states, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. I think that's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. They put Lincoln in such a tough position. Okay. South's trying to take this fort over. Okay. But those 8 states that are kind of hinging back and forth on the fence, they say to Lincoln, if you use any force at all, if you attack the people that attack this fort, if you try to defend it with bombs, with guns, with rifles, with troops, with ammunition, if you use any force on the South, we're flopping. We are also seceding. We're joining them. So Lincoln is sitting here with probably one of the toughest historical decisions that he's ever had to make. What do I do? Okay, G.T. Beauregard here is trying to take over Fort Sumter, but I can't use force, because if I use force to defend it, I'm going to get 8 more states to secede. So Lincoln has a crazy challenging decision to make. What does he decide to do? I mean, you guys could think about it. What would you do? What would be your call here? Lincoln decides, instead of actually attacking it, he decides to send civilian ships in, not with troops, not with ammunition, not with guns, but with food, with supplies. He basically sends supplies into Charleston, into Fort Sumter, just to resupply it, okay? And he reaches out to the governor of South Carolina, Governor Pickens, and he says, Governor Pickens, I just want to let you know, I'm sending boats in. They're unarmed. All I want to do is resupply my fort, okay? So now that's actually a smart decision, because now if those ships that Lincoln was sending from the north to resupply Sumter, if those ships were attacked, okay, the South, the Confederate States, would then look like the bad guy, because there were no troops on them. All he wanted to do was resupply it. Okay, so he doesn't look like the aggressor here, Lincoln. He wants to resupply it just so that the people at Fort Sumter, the federal troops, can maintain, can live, can survive. Okay. Unfortunately, as we know, we're wrapping up to the end here. On April 12th, 1861, this is the official start of the Civil War at 4:30 a.m. Most of us still sleeping then. I think 99% of us are. The Confederates wind up attacking Fort Sumter. They felt like they didn't have a choice. They didn't attack those civilian innocent ships, but they do attack the fort. And for 34 straight hours, so that's one full day plus an extra 10 hours, 34 straight hours, they bomb the crap out of Fort Sumter. They set it on fire. Most of it is totally destroyed, ablaze, so on fire. They're surrounded, the federal troops in Fort Sumter, low on ammo, low on just about everything. This man up top, Major Robert Anderson, he's forced to surrender the next day on April 13th. So Fort Sumter actually falls to the Confederacy, Confederate States of America. So now they control that, and now the Confederate States of America, they're excited. They are ready to go. They are thrilled, but they're like, this is going to be easy. We just took a federal fort. We are going to win this war. This is going to be a short conflict. And Anderson refused to evacuate, but obviously eventually he had to. He didn't have a choice. So this fall of Fort Sumter in South Carolina truly signals the start of the Civil War here, and now it's going to be all-out war. Okay, so there's a picture of the fort. Okay, then we looked at this map a bunch of times. Okay, here are all the people I just talked about. This one is awkwardly zoomed in. So again, just some names, just to go over. Just don't worry about memorizing names. Just want to get you familiar with some of these important people. So that's Commander Anderson. So he was the one that was controlling Fort Sumter. Here is the local commander of the Confederacy who attacked the fort. Okay, G.T. Beauregard. And then this guy, his name is F.W. I don't know what's with all these initials. F.W. Pickens. He was the governor. So basically Lincoln warned this guy here and said, hey, I'm coming in. He was supposed to forward that message to Beauregard and say, don't attack the ships, which they actually didn't attack the ships, but, trying to maintain peace. But eventually this man here, quite a great mustache, Beauregard is able to overtake Fort Sumter, signaling the true start of the Civil War. Okay, in the South were certainly the aggressors. Here is 34 hours of this, literally, and ridiculous fact. I don't know how. Not a single person died. So crazy. Basically, the South, the Confederate States, were more after taking the fort over and not really killing, I guess. Later, they'll be into the killing business, you could say. But 34 hours of this. I just have a quote over here about the attacks from somebody that was actually inside the fort. 4:30 a.m. Okay, so there were showers of balls and shells poured into the fort when the immense mortar shells, after sailing high in the air, came down in vertical direction and buried themselves in a parade ground. Their explosion shook the fort like an earthquake. So that's 34 hours of bombarding it. And the South's feeling pretty good. You know, they got these mints. They got their own. They like their own. They're doing their own thing now. They're pretty excited about what's going on here, and it sends Lincoln into a little bit of a panic here. And both sides right now are going to start to mobilize and get their troops ready to go. Unfortunately, no one is really well trained for this. I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath and close to 700,000 American deaths in the Civil War. But Fort Sumter is going to be that last straw, and this is the official start of it. A really interesting, a great, interesting time period to learn about is the Civil War and Fort Sumter. This is actually what it looks like today. It's a monument. It's obviously that's not what the fort used to look like. It was a little bit more built up, but this is the monument dedicated to it in the same location. A lot of people still go and visit it. But okay, that's going to be it for today, guys. So we covered a lot. Talk fast like always. The Civil War, Confederates versus the Union, North versus South. Literally in our country, there were tons of battles. Literally where we're sitting right now, whether you're in Old Bridge or I'm in Cranford or wherever, there were battles all around us. The Dred Scott decision led to it, as in the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Lincoln tries to compromise, somewhat shuts it down. There's 36-30 line, the Union, the Confederacy, and then the fall of Fort Sumter with some very important historical figures and an official start to the Civil War. Okay, so next class, we're going to get into some of the first battles, some of the mobilization of the troops, what it was like, what battles were like, what weapons, what technology was used. And we'll look at Lincoln a little bit. We're going to do a little reading on Lincoln, just about his personality and who he was, so you guys can have a pretty good understanding of him. Okay, so with that said, guys, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy. We'll talk soon. Probably another video. Today's Friday. Tuesday will probably be a little reading on Lincoln, so you guys can get a good understanding on him. And then I'm thinking Thursday next week will be Day B-Day. Thursday will be another video for us where we'll keep diving into the American Civil War. Okay, so have a great day. Enjoy yourselves, and hope to see you guys soon. Okay, take care.